Right?
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Thanks for joining us again. If you're tuning in for a second or third or fourth time for going along with this journey, and if it's your first time, welcome. We're streaming both on YouTube and on Twitch. And if you're watching this after the fact in our recording, I really appreciate that as well. If you've got questions or help along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. And joining me today are two Thoughtbot developers, Svenja and Silumesii. Svenja and Silumesii, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Svenja. I'm in Spain currently, and I'm a development team lead at Fusion. Really happy to be here. Silumesii.
Thanks. My name is Silumesii Maboshe, currently in Zambia, and I'm a developer at Thoughtbot as well.
Awesome. So, where we are now is we are upgrading the Ruby Science application from 3.2 to Rails 7. We have made it to Rails 5 in the last 3 weeks of pairing sessions. Yesterday, towards the end, we went to Rails 5 after being successfully getting to Rails 2 and getting Rails 4.2 and getting our test passing and all that stuff. We needed to upgrade our Ruby version in order to go to 5. And we started to do that, and it was going really slowly. Lots of things were being compiled. And if you've heard before, what I'm actually running is I'm on an ARM Mac, and so I can't run this version of Ruby natively, and so everything is going additionally slowly. We finished the stream yesterday, and I made sure that everything was working, and everything is working now. We were on the right track. It just took a long time to compile everything. So where we're at now is, and I'll share my screen. We are on Ruby 2.5.9, and we've just changed in our gem file to 5.0.7.2, which is the last patch version of Rails. I always like to, instead of just going to 5.0, go to the last patch version of the version we're trying to go to, so that we get all the bug fixes and any issues ironed out and that sort of thing.
Nice.
We, along the way, have needed to lock down various versions of things that we depend on, because what we're finding is that this stuff is so old that and a lot of applications don't put upper bounds on them because they don't want you to stop. Gems don't want to stop you from upgrading. But now this stuff is so old that when we, for example, upgrade Rails, Loofah, or Simple Form are going all the way to their latest version, and they don't work on the version of Rails or Ruby that we're running on. So along the way, we've needed to lock down versions on some things. And what we'll eventually do is remove those lockdowns, but we need to get to a modern version of Rails first. And I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah. Can you say something about the project, what we upgrade?
Yeah, so what this application is a survey builder and taker. So you can go on, you can create surveys with questions. That surveys have many questions. Questions have different types, so you can have multiple choice questions, fill in the box questions, that kind of thing. And then you can give that person a URL to that survey, and they can go and they can fill out the survey. And as an admin, as a survey creator, you can then go on and view the answers and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Thanks.
So, where we're at is we just changed our gem file and we rebundled. And so then just to see how things were, I ran rake, and we can see that we get some deprecation warnings. We finally hit the point where we're getting a deprecation warning that factory girl has been renamed to factory bot. And so we're going to tackle that and change our gem name to that. We are getting some deprecation warnings from Rails. We actually changed this in Rails 4.2, and now it's been fully deprecated and will be removed in Rails 5.1. So we're going to need to deal with that, as well as this setting here. And then our specs try to run, and we get a manifest needed error from Sprockets. We have no manifest file. This is because that didn't exist as a thing in the old version that we're coming from. So, and then nothing runs. Great, fine. So we're going to do what we didn't do for previous times, because we didn't need to, because we were going, generally speaking, from minor versions of Rails, 4.0, 4.1, 4.2. The changes aren't so big, so you don't always need to do this. And we also reviewed the release notes, and our specs were passing and all that stuff. But this time, enough has changed, and we're going to a major version of Rails. So I like to run the upgrade task. So previously in versions of Rails 5.0 changed from using rake for all of the tasks to using Rails, bin Rails for the tasks. So previously it was rake Rails : update in order to do that. And Rails 5, it changes to bin Rails. I have it. I'm looking down because I have it in my notes. App : update. So what this is going to do, hey, Myra, thanks for joining us. What this is going to do is it's going to regenerate the configuration files. My understanding about how this works is it, in a temp directory, generates a new Rails application with our same name. And then it diffs the config files for both of them and gives us the option to view the diff and overwrite the config file. So that's part of what this is going to do. It's going to run through the different configuration files for Rails, and it's going to give us options to update them.
I remember this change from rake to Rails. I had been so used to using rake at the time. And
I know.
Yeah, this all my muscle memory was
yeah,
was confused
exactly.
after this change.
So so the first file it's trying to giving us an option is saying config boot is different in our application versus what it would be in a brand new Rails application. So we'll hit D to view the diff. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so these look like, to me, just standard changes to the way the file path exists. Just wondering why we had the going up two directories. It doesn't make sense to me. So what we can do is we can go over to this website here. It's called railsdiff.org. It's a great website because what it does is it shows us going from a standard Rails application in 4.2 to a 5.0.72 application. It will show us the config file differences just between two stock Rails applications. And so we can go down to boot.rb, and now we can say, okay, we had the two going up two levels in our directories. That's not an application specific thing. That's an actual change from Rails version to Rails version. And it doesn't have to do with our application. So this is also changing require bundle setup. It was previously if file exists bundle gem file. turns out it looks like that was not a Rails change, but I feel safe with that. That's probably from another version of Rails, and we just didn't remove it before. So I think we can safely overwrite this. Do you both agree?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Let's
Rails diff looks really cool.
I didn't know
really
that,
helpful.
no.
It's really helpful because you look at these things and you say, is that something we're doing intentionally, or is it a Rails thing? And it helps you pinpoint that. Okay, so this is a routes file. So what I'm seeing here is you typically don't want to overwrite your routes file because it has all your routes in it. So what you're doing at the diff is you're never really going to overwrite it. What you're looking for is the differences. And the difference I see is that we go from example app application.routes.draw to rails.application.routes.draw in 5.0. So it's no longer using our application name there. And then there's a comment being added with a link to the guide. That's the only difference, right?
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, so the way we're going to do this, instead of overwriting, we just copy it, go to the routes file. So you might notice I'm copying the comment as well. And that's the idea there is I want to copy this comment because in the Rails version upgrades, we're going to constantly get a diff, and I want it to match the default. So this is not going to show up as a difference in the future and have to constantly be either adding or removing this comment. Other people might do it differently, but especially since I know we're going through a bunch of Rails versions sequentially, I want to minimize the noise in the diffs from taking.
I have a different question. Do you have a specific branch? Are you on a specific branch currently, or?
Yeah, I have a Rails-5 branch.
Nice.
So what I've been doing is every time I go to a different version of Rails or a different version of Ruby, I make a new branch so that I can always go back and we're working in small pieces. So I've saved the Rails routes. And so do we want to overwrite it? No, we don't want to overwrite it. Here's the application.rb file. So, oh yeah, so this whole journey has been a trip down memory lane. So I guess Rails 5 introduced changed the bootloader or the way that things are required. And now we have this require relative here. And it looks like some commented out stuff is being removed.
I'm curious to know, maybe this is not directly related, but your thoughts about comments in configuration files. Do you tend to remove them over time?
I tend to remove them over time. But like if I'm, especially now, I wouldn't remove them now. Well, I wouldn't remove them unless they were being removed because I want to minimize the noise in the diffs so that we can move through multiple Rails versions quickly. But then once we get to a point where we're just upgrading versions of Rails in a normal production application, when they come out or soon after they come out, I would probably be inclined to remove the comments that we don't need anymore because then we're taking it each as they come. I think that would be my personal preference. What about you?
I think I'm the same, but we had a PR that I had created that was removed these, and one of the team members made a really good argument to say some of the comments provide good context and documentation. So now I'm second guessing myself, but what they suggested made a lot of sense especially for bringing new people into a project.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I'm seeing that I think we can overwrite this file. with the standard. The only thing that actually changed is the require relative for boot, and we want that. And these other things are just comments being removed. So
let's go. Override everything.
Oh no! Come on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we want to go slowly and we want to be methodical because it's really easy to get yourself in a situation where you've broken too much, and you have no idea, and you just need to be like, oh well, I need to scrap everything I've just done and start over and go in smaller steps. So it's usually better to slow down a little bit and make sure. So, but yes, I appreciate the enthusiasm, especially since I really want to get to Rail 7 today. That is my mission. Okay, so these ones are also safe to override, I think. You agree?
Yes.
Agree.
Okay, so we got some files being created. Config secrets. Cable, action cable was introduced in Rails 5. A puma.rb, a spring.rb. It's funny to watch some of these things because they end up getting removed from Rails. So Spring ends up getting removed from Rails in a later version, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so then we're at development.rb conflict. So let's view the diff. This is where we need to make sure that we're not accidentally removing something that we added there intentionally. So consider all requests local, just some spaces being removed there. That's fine. Action controller perform caching, setting to false is just moving down the file to right here. We've got this feature in Rails about being able to then put your development mode into caching by dropping that text file in temp. This is just a period being added to that comment. This configuration is being added. Default URL options is being removed. And a file watcher is being added. So go ahead.
What was the default URL options? Why does this got removed?
Yeah, exactly. So this doesn't appear in the standard diff from Rails 4.2 to we actually mentioned this in a previous upgrade, I think. And I said, I would normally want this to be in an initializer because then it's not coming up in our config file as a difference all the time because it is going to be somewhat application specific. It's a little bit of a matter of preference, but I wonder whether that is part of what's going on here. So what I think I want to do is just copy this line for now, overwrite the file, and then put that line back, and we can make a note to deal with that. This is development.rb. Okay, I'm going to overwrite the file, and then I'm going to put the line back. And now our production somewhat similar things. Looks like some, yeah, we saw this deprecation warning one in the rake. The Rails, the specs were running. We have very few application-specific things here in the production file. Some action cable configuration is being added. So log tags is being uncommented. Some job stuff. Oh, those are comments. This was comments. They're being removed. Okay. We don't have any, I'm not seeing any application specific stuff there that needs to be preserved. Do the two of you agree?
Can we go a little bit up?
Yeah.
I just wanted to, we said perform caching to fold, but that's not, yeah.
Yeah, we weren't, there was nothing here previously
No.
setting it.
And we just, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then the test configuration file. So this one has the test specific default URL options. It's dealing with those cache changes. And then that's it. So I think we can overwrite this file and then just put that configuration back. Sound good?
The default URL option, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, MIME types. And a MIME types initializer has a difference in it. Okay, so just a comment to register an alias is being removed. So we can just overwrite that. Looks like the syntax for, so it looks like Rails 5 really went through and changed it. So instead of name spacing the application under a application specific name, everything got more generic, which is also, it's good for a couple reasons, but in this context, one of the reasons why it's good is the next time we do an application change, we're not going to get, diffs there. It simplifies the configuration so that configuration files are the same across different Rails applications and not just varying based on the application name. Okay, I think we can overwrite this.
That looks good.
So wrap parameters changed. Okay, this is just a comment. Oh, the spacing is actually just changing on that comment. And then this one is the conditional is being removed. It looks like now it just always responds to that in this version of Rails. And so I think this is safe to override. Do you both agree?
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, our locale, again, this is another file like the routes where we rarely want to actually overwrite it because it has all of our application specific stuff. So what I'm really looking for here is just, did any of the format change or anything like that? And looks to me like it didn't. So we're good to just skip this. What is skip? No. And then bin Rails has a has a conflict. We're probably going to want to let it just overwrite that. Yeah. That's it. After this, cool.
Nice.
That looks good.
And Rails 5 introduced a
sorry.
standardized bin setup, which we had actually been doing for years before, which is a nice thing. What were you going to say, Svenja?
maybe obvious, but why is the Y uppercase?
It's the
in the
default.
options.
It's the default option, so you can just hit enter to have that.
But why is it uppercase? Why isn't it lowercase like all the other characters?
Because it indicates that it's the default option.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks.
What was I gonna do? Oh yeah, I was gonna commit. Actually, we got some new files here, so I keep on rebooting, and so I really need to just add it so the editor changes back to Vim. But okay, what did we do? We ran Rails app update. Okay, let's run the specs and see what breaks. I'm fully expecting these not to pass. It would be very rare to just run Rails app update and have everything work. Especially since what I'm anticipating too is if you were watching the stream yesterday, one thing this app does is it renders a template outside of a model. And we really struggled to go back and find the correct syntax for that in 4.2 because it was just so old. And we eventually figured it out. But in the process of figuring it out, it looked like it changed in Rails 5. So I'm expecting that is going to break. Okay, so actually we're back in the same spot where Sprockets is saying there's no manifest file. So it looks like Rails app update didn't generate a manifest file, which is interesting to me, but we're getting a helpful error message about upgrading manifests. So let's take a look at that. So previously, if you wanted Rails to serve a non-standard named asset, you would have to add those to a precompile list. Sprockets 3 introduced the concept of a manifest file. Okay, so we need to, then you will link to that CSS file in your manifest.js file. In Sprockets, the link directive. Okay. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is we need to create a manifest.js file in our assets directory. And it's actually giving us the content of the file here as well. What I want to check is whether we're doing anything special in the CSS file or the JS. No. We're including jQuery and jQuery UJS. I think that's standard at this. Rails 5 may have not made that standard.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that as well. I don't think so.
Okay.
For Rails 5.
Yeah. So, but that being said, what we're doing is we don't, even if that's the case, we still need the manifest file because the manifest file is going to link, is the top level thing for Sprockets saying, look in images, look in JavaScript, and look in style sheets inside of assets. And that is where our files are, assets, JavaScript, application.js. So that's fine. What this would really give us is if we were including another thing that wasn't application.js or wasn't application.css, and I'm not seeing that. So I think we can just take this we want this file. So, oh, is there no app assets config? Oh, there's no config file. There's no config directory. Okay, that might do it. We're still getting this scary error message about the version of Ruby gems having a bug. But it's not holding us back so far. So I'm just going to continue to choose to ignore it.
I'm curious, given how we do test-driven development as a practice, if we had no tests and we were trying to do this big of a jump, would you have scrapped it all completely?
I would have quit. You didn't need to find a new CEO. No, in all seriousness, this is, I don't want to say impossible, but it becomes very difficult to do Rails upgrades if you don't have of any significant magnitude if you don't have specs. And the way that I would approach that for an application is to basically you need to do a lot of manual QA, a lot of manual QA. And if you can minimize that over time by introducing specs, then that would be great. But you're not going to be able to have confidence that your application is working. If you look at the release notes for Rails 5, a whole bunch of stuff changed with the way active record relationships work and all that stuff. If you don't have tests exercising that, then the only way to know that your application is even still working is to use it all. And that the way that you would do that is manual QA. A lot of manual QA. Okay, so our specs in general ran. We got 124 specs total, 64 failures. So about half of our tests failed, which is great. What I'm seeing is the good thing is it looks like a lot of these failures are the same. So that makes me optimistic because it means when we fix one, we'll probably get the others. Okay, well, this jumps out at me. So I'm just scrolling up slowly, getting a sense of what's there. This jumps out at me because it relates to what we just did, which was add the manifest file. And it's saying Linktree argument must be a directory. And we're pointing to images, app assets, JavaScript style sheets. There's no images directory there. Now maybe this isn't realistic, but it turns out it doesn't look like our application actually has any images. So we can add that directory or we could remove it from the manifest file. I'm inclined to leave it in the manifest file and add the directory because this is a standard manifest file and the images directory would be expected to be there. I see nods, so I assume you're feeling good about that.
Yeah, at first I would have said, let's remove it. But then, like with this, if we keep it, we know if we want to add images, we know exactly where we have to put them.
Right. So we need to add the directory, and it's going to be empty, so we need to add a ignore there. So that would have been a failure anytime one of our specs, all of our feature specs, basically, anytime that pages were being rendered. So that's going to be a lot of the, it's a lot of the errors. So let's run. Okay. What I was looking for was an individual spec to run so that I didn't need to run all of them, but I didn't see it quickly, so I figured I would waste more time looking for it than just running the specs again.
Also, it might be a nice feeling to see the numbers of failed examples.
Yeah.
Decreasing, hopefully. Hey, folks. There's some new.
Hey. Hey, Amy. Hey, Sumyong. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any comments, questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. There will be times probably where we're stumped and we're not sure, and we definitely welcome the help as well.
What time is it for you?
For me, it's
Yes.
9:30 in the morning.
Okay.
What time is it for you?
3:40, more or less, like in the afternoon.
What about you, Silu?
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same time zone. Well, same. Let me get this right. Same UTC offset.
Right. Okay, so we went from 64, I think, failures to 37 failures. So that's great. That's progress.
Nice.
And it looks like a lot of our feature specs, which were failing before, are passing now, and most of them are in the model. Actually, all of the failures are in the models. So let's just start from the bottom. So what this is saying is undefined method belong to for RSpec example group. So belong to is provided by Shoulda. It's a matcher for active record and other Rails kinds of things. So we have two things. My hunch is that there's one of two things going on here. The first would be that something changed with Shoulda and it's not being included correctly. The other is that we're running into a problem with RSpec expect versus should syntax because that changed, the default changed in RSpec. At this point, I'm more inclined to blame Shoulda because we are including Shoulda matchers with no version there, and we have never, in going from Rails 3.2 to Rails 5, we've never changed the version of Shoulda that we were using. We've never updated that gem. It's not locked down, but unless we told Bundle to explicitly upgrade Shoulda matchers, it wouldn't have done it. So if we can confirm that by going over the lock file and looking at Shoulda matchers. So okay, Shoulda matchers is currently 4.5.1. So the latest version is 5.3. Just want to check something. So it's nice to know when the version of Rails we're working on came out. So we're going to 5.0. So 5.0 came out in 2016. So the reason why I'm going back to 5.0, because these are security patch releases. So if we were looking there and we say, oh, 2018, then, that's when it came out. And we might upgrade Shoulda too far or run into problems with upgrading things too far. We want to go back and say, what was the version of Shoulda around the time that this version of Rails came out? And so what we're talking about here is August of 2016. And so the version of Shoulda that was out then was 3.1.1. We're actually, wait, this is Shoulda. Oh no, Shoulda matchers. So we're actually past a version.
We're good.
There.
Yeah.
So then what I'm going to do then is go over to the documentation for Shoulda. It's such a nice Shoulda website. I forget that we have such a nice website for Shoulda Week. So what I actually want is the source code.
It's the socks for me on the website. Sorry.
What'd you say? Yeah.
It's the socks for me on the website.
So what I want to do is I want to look at the instructions for installing it and see whether we're doing that properly. So if you're working in a Rails app, simply place this at the bottom of your file. Okay. So we have a spec helper file. So I'm not seeing it. And so I'm going to just search for Shoulda. Okay, so it's not being included at all. My guess is that at some point we went from automatically including it to needing to explicitly include it. That's my guess. Don't really know though, but it sounds like I know. And that's really what matters.
I agree.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah. 2016. That's when I finished my boot camp. That's really, yeah.
So you would have been doing Rails 5.
Yeah, started with it.
Actually, probably 4 too.
Yeah.
So now I'm just running the one spec to see whether we get rid of this error, and it's not. It didn't get rid of it. Okay, so undefined method belong to for okay, so so here's the syntax. I'm just double checking that we're doing things the way we expect. So it should belong to. We have a describe, question.
You mentioned that, like with the upgrade, lots of active record changes were made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've seen more failures with belong to.
Yeah, let's look. Oh, I lost the to my memory, they were all in the specs, but I could be wrong about that. So I'm starting to think it might be the expect versus should syntax. We might not have that configured correctly. So when we went from 4.0, we actually skipped 4.1 and went right to 4.2. And from that, we only had 4 test failures in that move. And that's a good example of why we were able to skip 4.1. Like it's really through most point releases of Rails, the changes they're just not huge, big changes, or they tend not to be. And so you can sort of play a little more fast and loose, but you can see going to a next major version of Rails, a lot more stuff broke. So let's see. This is also provided by Shoulda, these validate matchers. So it's still not finding any of the Shoulda methods. This is a little different. It's expecting this model to respond to has one question mark, and it doesn't. But that is that's like Shoulda is supposed to be providing a have one method. It's not. But this syntax for RSpec is going to match like the have syntax. So it's going to look for a has one question mark method on that. So it really looks to me like Shoulda is just not being found at all. Again, here's belong to. It's all in the example groups. Yeah. Yeah, so it's all in the specs. So either something's wrong with like I said, the should versus expect configuration, or should is not being included properly. We could also try upgrading Shoulda matchers.
If we upgraded now, would that cover us right until the very end? Is that the plan? Well, the idea?
It depends, but yeah, that would be the idea, because we would go from 4.5 to 5. What do we want to try? Let's just try upgrading. 4.5.1. So remember that number, everybody. 4.5.1.
I got it.
Those are a bundle update Shoulda matchers. The reason why we want to remember that number is we want both when this happens to see what version it goes to, and if we get ourselves in a situation where this didn't help, we might want to go back to that other version.
Awesome. It's very warm on my end, and my laptop fan has kicked in. I'm hoping the noise cancellation is reducing it.
I actually can hear it, but it's not too bad.
Okay.
So while that runs, I just am, gonna go. Just what I'm doing here is just double checking. So the instructions didn't tell us to require anything for shoulda. So that's fine. And then what I want to also do is so in 2012, the default or a new variant was introduced from the should syntax to the expect syntax. Eventually that became, I believe, the default in RSpec. And so there's a configuration option. So I just want to so it's in the RSpec configure block, the syntax should or expect, or you can enable both. So we have neither, right? Neither.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible the default changed from should to expect in this jump, and we're not configuring either. And so that means to me that that might be the problem. Bundler attempted to update shoulda matchers, but its version stayed the same. Okay, well, we tried, and something said, no, you're not the version you have is fine, and you're going to be happy with it. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. Let's configure the should syntax explicitly here. And let's run our spec again.
And removing the one with the expect with, because there we set the config syntax. Line
we're
20.
using should all throughout this application. There's no
There, I mean, on
it's
line
right
20.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I didn't see that before. So we are setting it. I missed that.
Just a bit different to how it was shown.
Yeah.
It looked different, right?
It probably
it
changed.
didn't.
This is an old blog post. So it probably changed.
So we actually are configuring it.
Yeah, we are. Okay. Let's go back to our spec file. So one thing that stands out to me is, if we have some configuration option wrong, it might not know the type of the spec properly. Is that the syntax? Yep. So here I'm getting desperate, and I just want to put everything back to like the absolute.
I wanted to ask that.
default,
Yeah.
just to eliminate any variables of what might be happening. And I'm still not convinced as well that shoulda is actually, we're not getting an error, but I'm not convinced that it's fully included properly, because it's all the shoulda methods that aren't being found.
Right.
Okay.
I think it must be an uppercase S. Capital S? Uppercase S?
That looks right. Let's go back here. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that fixed
Which
it.
one was it now?
Yeah, exactly. We changed two things at once. Okay, so let's change this one first, because that's the one I think it's probably not. I suspect that shoulda's not hooking in properly to generic specs, or it wasn't. No, it didn't know that it should be there, basically. Yeah. So there is a configuration setting, right, to infer the type from the thing, from the location of the spec and the class that is being tested. That would be an RSpec setting. I would prefer not to have to change all our specs, so I'm going to look that up.
I actually didn't realize that was configurable. That's cool.
I could be wrong.
It didn't sound like, so it's just like.
That's fair.
Okay, documentation. So we are, what version of RSpec are we on? RSpec Rails 3.9.1. Whoops, clicked. Oh, this is quite the interface. Okay.
It's config infer _ spec _ type from file location.
Doesn't appear in this document, but that sounds really right to me. So you want to put it. Oh, infer base class for anonymous control. Okay, so you want to put what it is there.
Let me. Oh, I have to switch to input mode, because usually what I'm using is. Can I now type? I will.
You should be able to type now. Oh, I have Vim key bindings too, so.
On my different laptop. So, that should be it. Infer spec type from file location. That's what I wrote? Yeah.
Yeah. So now we go back to the spec and we remove this, and it should still pass. So I wonder whether, do either of you know whether that's still the default in RSpec and we just lost it along the way? It used to be like the only option and then it became optional or something like that.
I have no
can't say.
clue.
Yeah, neither have I. But I've never had to set it, at least not in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. So that still passed, which is what we were expecting. And so now I'm running all the specs again. There is the chance, it's low, but there is the chance that almost all the specs will pass now. And because when we scrolled through, they were almost all.
It's Friday, so it has to.
I'm trying to look for a good analogy for pair programming, and the idea of letting someone into your house comes to mind, because configurations and things like that tend to be very specific. I'm not sure if that, well, what your thoughts are on that as an idea. If I wanted to explain pair programming to someone.
Yeah, letting someone into your house sounds really invasive, though.
It,
So I don't know that I would go so far as that. But I get what you're saying.
Drive your car?
Right,
maybe?
drive your car. That might be
yeah. Because I guess
like you know what it's really like is like if one person is steering the wheel and the other person is doing the brakes, though.
Right.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, it's time for lasers.
I disabled it.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Okay, so now we got our specs passing, but we've got deprecation warnings. So we need to resolve those. So let's do that. So in Rails 5, or in Rails 5.1, before filter was renamed before action. The transition period was in 5.0. So we need to change every instance of before filter. Oh, we've only got the one, so we don't need to do a global find and replace. And then in our unsubscribes controller, skip before filter is deprecated, and we want skip before action. While that runs, I'm going to just look at the other ones. So ignore is deprecated and will be removed in 5.0. Please use transient instead. So that's actually coming from, I have to force myself to say, factory URL. So that is probably going to go away when we upgrade that.
Nice.
I think that's all of them. Okay, things are looking good here. So I'm just seeing whether we've got any constants. We do. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the gem name we're going to change the content constants, and then that should be, we'll bundle, and then that should be it.
I'm so happy that I'm now joining. Like when we change that, it's I really like Factory Girl. I also like the name. Yeah.
Well, I've told this story before, but maybe a lot of, oh, I didn't bundle. The our first open source package ever was called InvoiceBot, and ThoughtBot is named ThoughtBot because what we would always do when we were naming our computer programs, our libraries, the objects in it, we would put bot at the end of the name. And so, like, Factory Girl is an example of when you try to be clever. You know, it's a music reference. It's about the Rolling Stones song of working in the factory. You end up doing things which, you know, it's clever to you but not clever to everybody. And actually, Factory Bot is, in my opinion, an actual better name, especially given that we name things by putting bot at the end of it. In general at ThoughtBot. So
Was there ever a plan to call it upcase bot, or was upcase an exception?
I think that was an exception. So I think that there's something going on with, so when we upgraded the version of Ruby that we were using before, this right here, and the version of Bundler, this right here got a lot slower. I don't know. I suspect that there's something wrong in this old version of stuff, because it definitely got slower. And we're also getting this weird error message. So okay, so we may run into trouble. We went all the way from an old version to a quite new version, I think. The version number generally matches the version. Yeah, so we went from the whatever we were on before, which was down here, to the latest version of FactoryBot. So we may run into problems with that. Let's see if I can. I needed at one point. I needed to go back to saying bundle exec because bundle was messing up. Yeah. Okay. So rake is being activated. So we need to change the version of rake so we can stop having to do bundle exec again. But in the meantime, we'll run the specs and see whether they pass. It's possible we went up in version on FactoryBot too fast and configuration changed or something changed that we're going to need to fix, but maybe not. We'll see.
Hi, Fabio.
Hey, Fabio, welcome back. We're making good progress. Okay, undefined method text in answer factory. Did you mean text? Aha. Okay, so we at one point changed it. So it used to be that you only needed to do blocks to FactoryBot if you were doing something dynamic. In this case, I don't know why it's a block there, probably just out of habit. Then we standardize on everything being a block instead of so that it was consistent. So that means that this needs to be changed to the block. This needs to be changed to the block. Whoops. See, it used to be you only needed to do blocks if you were doing something dynamic within it, because otherwise when the class is initialized, the string would be initialized at the time the class is, and so you can't do dynamic things in it.
Interesting.
But the consistency of always doing a block means that you don't need to think about that, of whether you need a block or not. It's just always there.
For user experience, or is it quality of experience changes like that? How does that tend to end up coming about? Is it just from using the tool?
Yeah, I think so. I think it comes from, and that's a good point. Like, we don't tend to maintain gems and open source that we don't actively use, because it's difficult to do that and difficult to make it real. So yeah, I think that's where that came from, is like using it and realizing like you have got to have mental. Okay, so we've got more here. You've got to put energy into understanding when you need to use a block versus when you don't, and when it changes, when you go from, okay, I want to make this dynamic, you do it, and your tests fail because you didn't change it from being a string to being a block in a string in a block. Those kinds of things. So we've got some other factories here, so I'm just gonna look to see whether. Okay, that probably does it. Good question, though.
And maybe since we're on FactoryBot, do you tend to prefer to have factories in separate folders or in one file?
You actually broke up for me. I think the problem was on my side, but what did you say?
So when you're building your factories, do you tend to put them in one file or separate them out into separate folders, or separate files?
I like them all to be in one file.
Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because then I always know where to go.
Okay. What about you, Silumesii? I don't like to scroll. I don't like to scroll.
Same. Yeah.
I don't.
Given the choice, I prefer to have them in separate files, but it makes sense from where is this factory that I'm looking for perspective,
right,
to just have it in one file.
Right.
Looks like Fabio has a preference as well. I've just happened on the comments section here. I didn't realize people were commenting as we were talking.
Yes. So Fabio is on the separate files train, which is fine. And an application that I work a lot on, it was all in one file and it recently got split out, and that's fine. I can live with it, but my personal preference is not to have that. Okay, so we've got some failures here. They're all from different things in FactoryBot. we actually remember there was that warning about ignore being deprecated, and we just went up in significant versions on this, and so now it's no longer there. Unfortunately, I don't remember what the here it is. Ignore is deprecated and will be removed. Please use transient instead. Okay. It's nice to please, at least we said please. I appreciate that.
It's a friendly one.
So let's look for those ignores. So we think we need to do transient. So I'm just running one spec to see whether that fixed the...
I just had to Google again the German meaning of transient. Sometimes it's just like, just forget it. Ignore is easy. But yeah.
Okay, so that fixed the problem.
Amazing.
You know, to talk about the change, one of the things though that we need to deal with when you have a popular open source library is like, okay, we agree that we believe using blocks all the time is better. But making that change is going to break everyone's factories. And like a lot of Rails apps use FactoryBot. So
I think you're muted.
Some technical difficulties. We lost
Yes.
Silu. My mic just cut out.
I can't play some music.
Yeah. But does the better outweigh the pain of needing to make that transition? Whether that be in renaming a gem or just the way that the gem works.
Was there a big discussion back then?
Yeah. Even for the changing from blocks to blocks for everything, that would be a big discussion. It was, an issue, a pull request, a period of transition, that kind of thing. So we've got total success here. No deprecation warnings. All our specs are passing. We're just getting this weird error about Ruby gem versions, which we're continuing to ignore.
Transiently. Yeah. Now I know what it means.
So let's commit. Okay. Here, Silumeisi's coming back. And Svenja, you're gonna need to go soon. Is that?
Yes.
So you're going on vacation, right?
Yeah, that's a plan at least. I'll go to Ireland. First, we wanted to go today, but we're gonna start the journey tomorrow because we go by van So it will take about 4 days or 5 days. I don't know. Yeah.
So how do you get to Ireland from Spain via van?
So I'm in the south of Spain. So I'm really in the south in Andalusia. So I would go to probably via Barcelona. It depends on the day and time and which navigation tool I use. It either says go via Madrid or go via Barcelona. Probably via Barcelona, and then through France up to the north of France, and then take a ferry from France to London, then go driving to Wales, and from Wales to Ireland with another ferry. There are also ferries going directly from Spain to Ireland, but they take quite a long time, and I have 2 dogs, so that's
Wow.
not
And
an
then
option.
how long are you staying in Ireland for?
That's up to a decision. So I have 2 weeks off, but my plan is to stay there until January, because I can work from inside the van or from outside the van. I don't know how you say that. Like, I will be probably inside the van, and because of the weather, it's slightly different to the weather I'm currently in. Yeah, so if everything goes as it's planned, I'm gonna stay there until January and then go back to Spain.
Now, when you are being in the van, do you make a point of then of like traveling around and seeing different things and going places, and or do you like to sort of get comfortable in a particular place?
So for when I'm off work, definitely I want to see something. But I also really enjoy, so when I find a beautiful place where there aren't any people and other dogs, then I really like to stay there. And yeah, I'm looking forward that it's gonna be green. So I live next to the desert, and there's no forests around, and really miss that. Welcome back, Silumesii.
Sorry about that. My connection cut out. I'm using my backup. Hopefully this will hold.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome back. My microphone also cut out temporarily at the same time, so I don't know. There was a solar flare or something. So I've changed to Rails 5.1.7. All our specs passed on 5 while we were learning about Svenja's upcoming vacation, which is great.
Oh, yes.
Have you been to Ireland before?
No, never.
I've been a couple times, and it's a lot of fun. I really like it.
I'm open for all information, and I asked some colleagues, because we have colleagues from Ireland, and so I'm not allowed to miss. And yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting because they drive on the other side of the road, and then it's quite a big van.
Yeah, that hadn't even occurred to me.
Yes, that's going to be interesting.
Especially because you'll be in your van.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh boy, that would make me nervous.
Just a bit. Yeah. It's gonna be fine.
It's gonna have to be.
Yeah. I'm positive of it. Yeah.
It'll be weird to drive off the ferry, right? Because you'll have to switch.
Yes.
Then.
Yeah. So I hope we're gonna get off the ferry of the first ferry, like from France, because that's when it starts. That they drive on the wrong side of the road, at least for me, on the wrong side, during at night. so that it's not a lot of traffic, hopefully. Yeah. Or just get off and park to just sleep. Yeah.
What do you use for an internet connection?
I recently switched because before I had a I'm not sure like a I'm not sure if you say it, call it a MiFi, a mobile Wi-Fi, but that didn't work out quite well when I was in Germany, and now I have a fixed router in it, so, and 2 antennas, so hopefully it's better. Yeah. Let's see. It worked quite nice, like in the mountains here in Spain.
Cool.
Yeah. And then we have solar on top. But then someone told me, oh, maybe you can forget about solar in the winter in Ireland. Good point.
So I've been to Ireland like 3 times, and it's been beautiful weather, sunny, no rain every time. And every time I go, and this has been years apart, everyone says, you're getting the best weather. It's usually not like this. But the only ever example I have is beautiful sunny weather. So maybe they just say that so that people don't stay longer.
That could be, yeah. So, but now it gets charged, or it can get charged, the batteries while driving. So I'm on the safe side, I would say.
So nice. We bundled 5.1.7, which is the last point release of 5.1. And now I'm running Rake. I'm just doing that before I run Rails app update. We don't need to run Rails app update. We'll probably get our specs will pass, or we'll get a few errors and we'll be able to resolve them. But I probably will, just so that our configuration files don't get too out of date as we go from 5 to 6 to 7, because I'm anticipating that there's going to be, I could be wrong, but for some reason I think because of the asset stuff that's going to change and everything, our config files are going to change a lot. So I want to stay on top of them.
Is the plan to end at 7.1, which came out a few days ago?
It came out yesterday, dude.
I'm excited.
No. Well, yes. I will take this application to Rails 7.1. Whether I will do it today or not, even 7 is going to be a stretch to get to it today. So if we keep on going like this, we'll be there.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Okay, we got some deprecation warnings. Passing string to be evaluated in if and unless conditional operations is deprecated, and will be removed in Rails 5.2 without replacement. Pass a symbol for an instance method or a lambda. Survey inviter line 10. Okay, so here's what we're doing here. So what we need to, wow, I forgot that this was even possible. This is wild. So we used to be able to pass a string with actual Ruby in it, and it would evaluate that as a,
what?
I guess, I don't know, either that or it's totally busted, but no. Okay, so we can no longer, we need to call this Ruby. So we could either extract this into a method, or we could just put a lambda or proc here.
How did that work before? That's incredible.
I don't know. So a block is valid though, right? What does this say? Proc or block or lambda instead. So I'm doing a block. Whoops. I hit the wrong keyboard shortcut. hope that's the right. Something doesn't look right about that to me. I'm worried it needs to be a proc, but. So Svenja, when do you need to go? Like right now?
I can't go right now. I can't. That's way too exciting. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So it's just like I made pancakes already, so all good.
Okay, yeah. So this is resulting in a syntax error, which something didn't feel right to me. I think it's thinking that's a hash, and so that's not going to work. So what do we want to do? Do we want to turn this into a proc, or do we want to extract it into a method?
I'm thinking extract. I'm thinking method.
I would agree on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll call it. What do we want to call it? No recipients, or do we want to say something else? Recipients. We sort of have a double negative here.
I was thinking the same. Yeah, naming things is hard.
Well, but so we could also change it to if there's recipients.
If no recipients, yeah.
Oh, it would be if recipients.
Double negative is a positive. Okay, got it.
Let's just see whether this passes. Let's before resolving that, let's see whether this passes. And yeah, the Fabio says the Lambda should work. I agree, the Lambda will work, but I think it's a case of what we would prefer, and almost always prefer to have a method there. Okay, so that passes, gets rid of that deprecation warning.
Right, there we go. Thank you. I think that's much clearer.
Recipients. Well, we're checking only nil. So. Oh, I'm realizing I'm only running one of the specs because I need to make sure we can run all of them. Okay.
That's
nice.
Awesome.
Okay, so we never ran Rails app update. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to just committing the gem file dot lock the app assets there's untracked. We never actually added those files before, so That's a oversight. My Vim is showing. I'm just going to change my editor.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the editor choice.
Okay. What was I doing?
We were adding in, and we were going to do a Rails app update.
Yes. Yeah. And the reason why I noticed that was because this is saying these settings here are deprecated and will be removed. And it's talking about this new framework defaults initializer. So I think Rails app update is going to do some of that stuff for us. So and hopefully the changes will be minimal, so we'll be able to just go through it quickly. Well, Svenja, if you do need to go, no worries. You can just let us know, and then we'll tell you goodbye and wish you a good vacation.
Bye.
Okay. Routes, nothing changed. Okay, so Rails in 5.1 started introducing the concept of the ability to, like, Rails knows what the defaults were in 5.1, and now it's keeping track of what certain defaults were in different versions. And so you can tell it what to do for specific versions. So what it's suggesting here is that we're going to load the defaults for 5.1, which is fine. Our application is straightforward enough, and we also want it to be a good example since it's part of a book. So we want to use the defaults, in my opinion. In production, if we were doing this on like a real production application, I would be more inclined to keep the defaults the same, understand them, go through transition with them, maybe deploy with the new ones or the old ones, and then really make sure that everything is understood that we're changing in the defaults. Fabio, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. What was it? Oh yeah, I'm getting distracted now. We're gonna need to take a break soon. Okay, so we're gonna overwrite this. Secrets changed. Oh, on the first stream, the secret key was up on the screen, and I had an initial panic attack that I just, but this secret key is not a production key, and so it's okay. This is just the example one that's included in the book, so we can overwrite this. That's fine. Looks like the format of the action cable config changed to add a channel prefix. That's fine. We can overwrite that. The Puma config file changed. Actually, just, yep. So we can overwrite that. Our old friend default URL options.
I think I missed that. Is it still?
Yeah, it's just being removed again because it's still we put it back.
Yeah.
And we never resolved it by moving it into an initializer. So we'll do the same thing. We'll overwrite the file, then put it back. Okay, so it looks like 5.1 introduced the encrypted secrets. So that's the config for that. We're going to take that, test config has the same changes. So it looks like we have a change to assets.rb. It's all, oh no, it's not all just commented stuff out. Okay, so Rails is adding node modules to the asset path. So I guess Rails 5.1 is when Yarn was introduced and a dependency on node was introduced. This is a great, fun change to make because we're going to make it and then later on today we're going to remove it again when we rip everything out and just go to the default asset stuff. So, but we have to do it now. So
yeah,
we can overwrite this. Okay, it changed from Marshall to Jason. That's fine. We can take that change. And that we're going to ignore. Oh, what changed in the bin setup? Okay, yeah. So
I think.
I guess it's commented out. So at this point, it's optional if we're using Yarn. So we can take that change. That's fine. Okay, cool. So let's run the specs again and see if those deprecation warnings went away with the configuration changes. It's possible they did. It's possible that they didn't.
It's Friday, please. It's
So we heard about Svenja's plans. Silu, do you have any plans for the weekend?
There's a leadership summit that I'm hoping to attend. It's so I got to attend a similar one in August, and this is like a follow-up. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Cool.
What about your plans?
My plans have gotten a lot more boring. And what was supposed to happen was, if it's not obvious, I play Dungeons and Dragons. And what was supposed to happen is, so I went to a thing called D&D in a Castle earlier in the year. My group was awesome. DM was Jasper William Cartwright, who we had at our summit to play D&D with. So we had such a great time playing together. We were organizing with Jasper to get together remotely as a group and play again, sort of a sequel or something. And that has just gotten canceled and needs to be rescheduled. So instead we have new COVID vaccine appointments. And we also have a few other errands like our kids' passport renewals and that kind of thing. So we're going and we're just making it a day of errands instead. So our deprecations didn't go away. Okay, so callback chains on return false is deprecated and will be removed in 5.2. Okay, so this is in the new framework defaults, which was put there by Rails 5.0. Halt callback chains on return false. Yeah. So what this is previous versions had true. So callback chains, when they returned false, would previously halt. And they don't do that anymore. You need to raise an exception in order for the callback chain to be right. That's right. You're nodding, Silu. So I think that.
I'm actually not sure.
I'm just confused by that sentence.
Yes, because we have like so many double negatives
Yes.
in these two lines. It's okay. So what we can do in a scenario like this is we can just delete it and then run the specs again and see.
Oh no,
We
see the
lost
messy.
again. Welcome back.
I hit the wrong keyboard.
So what I did was just remove that line because because then that'll tell us whether we were relying on that behavior or not. It's possible that we were. It's possible that this application is relying on false halting callback chains. And it's also possible that it's not. So this will tell us. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to turn my attention to the next thing. Raise on unfiltered parameters is deprecated and has no effect in Rails 5.1.
If it has no effect.
Right. Okay. So actually, now that I realize this file is here, I should be doing these one by one, but I'm going for it. But what I should be doing is uncommenting each of those, running the specs, commenting each of those one by one, running the specs to see if anything breaks when we go to the new 5.1 defaults. But I'm a little impatient, so I commented them all out and now running the specs. The downside is if one of them fails, I won't have any idea which one caused it, and then we'll need to go back one by one.
It will be good.
Okay, thank you for the
I'm very optimistic today.
Are you usually optimistic? Are you usually
Yes.
an optimistic developer or a pessimistic one?
Good question. I'm a happy.
It's like
I'm
do you
optimistic,
usually assume
but I
things will
question
work?
everything.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Sila?
It depends on the day. Depends on the day. Yeah.
Okay, validation
Svenja,
fail. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, there we go. No, Svenja, I thought you were going to talk about like four-leaf clovers and leprechauns and things like this.
So something changed. And I bet what it is see, all these validations are failing, that something must exist. And the last thing in our file here is belongs to required by default. So Rails 5.0 to 5.1, 5.1 made belongs to required, or 5 did required by default. So now belongs to has a validation built in. It didn't used to have that. It looks like we are depending on that. So we can solve this in two ways. We could put this back. We could put this option back. Or we could go through all our belongs to and add optional to the places that we want it. What I'm inclined to do is to put this option back. And the reason why is because I have the secondary goal, like this source code is in a book. And so I have a secondary objective here of not changing too much in the source code, because then I need to really make sure that everything's correct for the book. And so that's why I would be inclined to do that.
Chad, would you consider yourself optimistic versus or pessimistic as a developer?
Yes, I'm optimistic. And the downside of that tends to be if I'm estimating for myself, I tend to be pretty good about it. But the bigger something is, the more my estimates will be off, because I'm just optimistic about how long things will take. So, for example, I thought that I would be done with this upgrade in like 2 or 3 streams, and now it's been a lot more than that. So.
I'm not complaining.
But it's so much fun. Exactly.
Yeah, I got to join this. I got to join one of the streams. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, the streams are going to continue regardless. I
Nice.
just thought I'd be able to move on to other things and do some actual like feature development or something like that. Okay, good. We got everything passing, no deprecation warnings. So I commented out everything except that. We are going to leave that one in place.
That's also a good finish for me. Let's come in.
And now I have VI as my Git editor. Everything's great. Svenja, you gonna leave us?
Yeah, you're gonna take a break now?
Yeah, we'll take a break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, Svenja, for joining. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Have a great time off, Svenja.
Thanks for having me. That was amazing. Thank you.
Oh, let's go rock. didn't actually check at what time we went on the break, so I don't know whether it's been 5 minutes or not.
I didn't check either.
Seems about right.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
What were you going to say?
I was over the break getting familiar with the interface and realizing that we have comments, but I'll pick up after you.
Stephanie says we gotta create a DJ Chad playlist for the live stream. The problem with that, Stephanie, is that it needs to be all royalty-free music. Otherwise, our stream will get shut down. So I appreciate the sentiment, though. Okay, so before we jump back in, I just want to remind people, Thoughtbot, we're a design and development company. This is what we do. We upgrade Rails applications, we maintain them, we grow them. We do mobile development and design as well. So if you're interested in working with us, you can go to thoughtbot.com, check out all our work there, and get in touch about, so if you got an old Rails application that needs to be upgraded or a new one that needs to be created, we're your people. Cool. So before the break, we successfully reached 5.1. Everything is passing. We've got no deprecation warnings. And so we can go to 5.2 now.
Nice. And while you're switching over, I didn't realize G Cosmo, we're talking about optimism versus pessimism. Looks like we've got two optimists on the call. On the stream. G Cosmo says he's optimistic for others. And Myra, who I had the opportunity of having some office hours with about a week ago, says optimistic in a team, pessimistic for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I created a new branch for 5.2. Oh, you know, if we were smart, what we would have done is we would have, right before the break, changed the gem file and then bundled while we were on break.
Right, on the break, right.
But we're not smart. So I'm expecting at some point that we're going to run into trouble with some of this stuff that we've locked down because we didn't upgrade it in 5.0. We needed to lock it down when we went to 5.0, and we're going to start to get further out of date with those things. So I'm expecting at some point we're going to run into trouble with that. If we don't, that's good. But if we don't hit it in 5.2, that's good. We're more likely to hit it in 6.
In 6.
Yeah.
The last time I did a Rails upgrade, we use standard on this particular client project, and that ended up making it interesting in terms of the, I think the Rails app update changes. What are your thoughts on using standard in general and how that affects Rails upgrades?
You're saying like at some point the format changed, and so a bunch of stuff the diffs got really messy. I'm a big fan of whether it be standard or other things, but I'm a big fan of having a team having a style guide and then following it and doing it using code and automation. But when you first introduce it, it can introduce a lot of noise and make it difficult to know what's changing. So I usually like to separate those things. Was it the Rails upgrade in particular? You also introduced standard at the same time, or the format that standard was using changed as it was upgrading?
I think for this particular one, we had been using standard on the project for a while, so it was more formatting like documentation and things like that. The comments more special. Yeah, I think it in particular was the comments that made it look like we were changing more than we actually were.
Yeah. Yeah, I might turn it off. Like I might turn it off, do the upgrade, commit that, make sure everything's working, even though it might have things that are against the style guide, and then turn it back on. That way you know what's happening because of the upgrade and what's happening because of the code formatting.
Nice. I like that.
Well, the good thing is what happened, what I was afraid was going to happen didn't happen, which was I was afraid we weren't going to be able to resolve the dependencies because of this stuff, some of this stuff locked down.
Yeah.
So that's good.
And we're still on Ruby 2.6, is that right?
Actually 2.5.
Okay.
And that'll be okay for a while. According to this compatibility chart that I have here, 5 was less than 2.5, so that was fine. 5.1 is less than 2.6, so that's fine. So, oh, sorry, I was saying the end of the thing, and I should have said the beginning. So we're not going to have a problem with running on 2.5 until 6.1.
Nice.
At which point it becomes not possible to run on 2.5. So we'll need to change over then.
I guess that makes sense. I wouldn't have thought to do it that way, but it sounds like we're going to hold off as long as we can on the same Ruby and then upgrade that until we absolutely have to.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I'm doing that too is because I'm in the fully emulated x86 environment for this.
Right.
It's really slow to compile new versions of Ruby. And I've pre-compiled 2.6 and 2.7 on this, but then it's also really slow to compile the native gems that need to be compiled.
Right.
And so I'm just reluctant to spend the time on the stream like that's the problem we ran into yesterday. Was it turned out we needed to compile a bunch of gems because we had to upgrade the Ruby version, and it took a long time. But yes, I would generally just try to do one or another. And since we're not going to run into version issues that I know of, I'm going to let this ride and try to go as far as possible on it.
Nice.
Okay, I'm curious, as usual, to run bundle exec rake first, see whether everything passes and whether we have any deprecation warnings before running app update. Just to get a lay of the land. And it's possible that everything works in the new version out of the box. Unlikely, but possible.
Svenja says it's Friday.
It'd be funny to start saying that when it's not Friday.
I like that. I think I'll try that on Monday morning. What do we have?
Okay. So represent Boolean as integer set to false is deprecated. SQLite databases have used T and F to serialize Boolean values and must have, we lost it, and must have old data converted to 1 and 0, its native Boolean serialization, before setting this flag to true. Interesting. So we are running on SQLite for the purposes of this. So we're going to need to deal with that. Dangerous query method. method whose arguments are used as raw SQL called. Looks like all our specs passed, which is great.
Yes.
But we're getting several deprecation warnings. At this point, we could run Rails app update. We could also run, we could not. Like I said earlier, I'm inclined to do it because I'm just anticipating a bunch of changes from Rails 6 to Rails 7, and I want to stay on top of the config files.
Nice.
And by working, I'm hoping that by doing this every time, we'll avoid a situation where a bunch changes out from underneath us with the config files, and we need to spend a bunch of time debugging it. Okay, Bootsnap is introduced in 5.2 apparently, so we're going to let that come in. The routes, again, we're not going to overwrite our routes, but we're looking to see whether anything changed. Nothing did, so we can ignore that. This looks like just comment changes, so we can take that. Action cable config changed again. Okay.
5.2 action cable.
Yeah, it looks like it's just changed from a hard-coded Redis URL to being able to get it from the environment.
Nice.
So we can take that change. We're gonna hit this every single time. Okay, active storage was introduced in 5.2.
Very cool.
That's fine. And we'll shortly after deprecate paperclip to the to the horror of many.
Was that hard to do?
Well, it's technically a very easy thing to do. Are
A
you
hard
saying
decision to make.
emotionally?
Yes.
No, it was sort of obvious. It's a hard decision to make, but it was sort of obvious that community would be better with less options and with standardizing on something.
Paperclip is what was probably the first gem that I used from ThoughtBot back in the, might have even been the Rails 3 days.
A space is being added in production.rb and active storage is being configured. Okay, it looks like I think this was optional in prior versions, and now it's probably just become the default to read the key from encrypted secrets. So that's fine. We can just overwrite that.
Just realizing I haven't used the hash rocket in a long time. I miss it.
You miss it?
Yeah. I know the current syntax is definitely shorter, but there's just something, I don't know. It's it has personality to me, for me at least.
I just did what I was hoping I wouldn't do, which was accidentally hit enter when I meant to type no, and I just overwrote our
locales.
That's okay. We have get. We could put it back.
Yep.
Okay, so that change, we can take that. That all important space was added. So Some requires were changed. That's okay. So yarn was introduced in 5.1. It looks like some stuff changed with it. We're fine to take those changes. Okay, we need to restore.
Thanks for joining, Stephanie. We'll see you soon.
Stephanie, talk to you later. Okay, those are the changes. Nice. Complete failure. Cannot load such file. Bootsnap setup.
Bootsnap setup.
So that was one of the things that changed in boot.rb was that changed. So place I would go for this is the release notes or the upgrade guide for
Right.
Rails. So we're going to 5.2. So active storage was introduced. Credentials, we saw that. Rail ties. I'm not seeing anything. I would have expected it up near the top, but so I'm just going to search for Bootsnap. Add Bootsnap to default gem file. That's the problem. So our gem file doesn't have. Well, that's interesting that Rails doesn't. Rails app update doesn't.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. So Rails app update should typically. Would it update gems as well?
No, that's the thing, but which is not what you would normally want it to do. But the fact that it doesn't even give you a diff to see what would have been the defaults in a gem. It hadn't been occurring to me that we weren't seeing the gem file until we ran into a problem where something was missing. So, yeah, how would you? So I guess you just need to read the upgrade. Well, you would identify it just like we're identifying it. We run the specs. It failed. The app in this case would also fail. It wouldn't boot. And then we would go and we'd look and we'd say, why is that? And we'd find the guide. So I guess the way we're fixing it is the way that it works. So speaking of the Ruby upgrades, though, once we get to a point where we are on a Rails that can run on the newer version of Ruby, I'm excited for that point, and I'll jump up to that new Ruby quickly. And part of the reason why is because then I'll be able to run this on my actual computer, and it will be a lot faster.
Yeah, for sure. So will you do the Ruby upgrades incrementally as well, and in a sense hold off to move on to the least next compatible, and then hold on as long as possible?
The answer to that probably should be yes, but if I'm honest, I probably won't.
Got it.
I'll probably give it a try because, my computer is already set up for 2.7.6 or whatever, and I have the app checked out and I can see whether it will work or not. And then if I run into problems, then I'll go incrementally. But if I didn't run into any problems, I would probably just make the leap. Okay, it looks like message pack is being introduced. Don't actually know what that is. Whenever I notice a new gem, I sometimes like to... It's good to know. Do you have a guess what it is?
I do not know. I'm going to guess it's got something to do with the action cable changes. That's my guess.
Yeah. I'm going to guess that it has to do with, was it binary? What is it? Like packed? There's a way of packing information down and communicating in that.
Okay.
Yeah, a binary-based efficient object serialization library. Yeah, nailed it.
Nice. Exchange structured objects between many languages such as JSON. Right. And I think this makes sense because why would this make sense?
It might be what action cable communicates in. I think
Got
maybe
it.
you are right about that. It's interesting that updating Bootsnap did that though, but so maybe it's something to do with Bootsnap. Okay, so that bundled, and we have Bootsnap now, so hopefully our specs run. And in an ideal world, everything is just going to pass.
What do we have here?
So we're getting some already initialized constant errors from the net protocol gem. A lot of them. Looks like it has to do with action mailer for IMAP POP communication.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. We have these deprecation warnings about the dangerous query methods.
Are these the ones, the dangerous queries?
Those are the ones. Doesn't look very dangerous to me.
No, it doesn't. Count.
It's because we're passing in the raw SQL there.
Okay. Okay.
And it's not just a simple a simple thing. Because it's afraid that it's getting user provided values.
Right.
Okay, cool. So everything passed, but we just have those deprecation warnings.
Right.
So there's two ways of fixing this deprecation warnings. One would be if we were actually passing in user input there, we could change how we're calling it. The other is we can wrap this, since this isn't in user input and we know it's safe.
Nice.
We can do that. Multiple choice submittable. It looks to me like it's all the same thing. It's just being hit multiple times. So for this SQLite thing, if this were if we were working on this application and it was deployed to production, we would absolutely need to do this. We would need to do it in stages.
Right.
We couldn't just upgrade Rails and change this Boolean representation as an integer. We would need to do what it's saying here and introduce a rake task.
Yeah.
Deploy it with that set to false and run that rake task, like do a migration basically of the data. So we don't need to deal with that here in our application because it's not deployed to production.
And is that the kind of stepwise transition that something like strong migrations would help with?
In theory, yes. This is a weird change because it's you need to both change the configuration variable in Rails to get it to happen,
right?
But you need to migrate the data. Yeah, so you could probably put together a migration that and strong migration would like run it asynchronously without locking the table. You could also do it in a rake task.
Nice.
But you would have you would have either way. I think you might have an outage. You might need to go into maintenance mode while making the change because if you're making the config change, then you need the data to be correct. And if you're not making the data config change, you need to have TNF in your columns.
Right.
So, okay, so we can just put that in our application.rb file. So we also have these net protocol things. So let's run the specs and then look back at our gem file. So this was net IMAP and net pop depend on net, but we're not including net IMAP. So what depends on net IMAP? Mail gem. And what depends on the mail gem? Action mailer.
Action mailer.
Email spec. Okay, so that's probably why the mail gem's not being upgraded along with Rails because we are Oh no, yeah, we're locking because in the gem file.lock it's gonna be email spec, and we didn't upgrade email spec.
Right.
So what I see there is we want to bundle update email spec. And hopefully that'll allow the mail gem to update. Actually, let me git commit before we do that. So this is perform 5.2 upgrade.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah, we performed the upgrade, and we even after we just did the upgrade, the specs totally patched. We just had the deprecation warnings. So we're definitely able to move faster now. We're having more success along the way because before the versions of things were so old that not only was like everything broken, but we needed to do a lot more locking down in order to get things not to upgrade too far, gems to not upgrade too far, because that was causing the things to break. And then also just like the config of everything was out of date. And when we were trying to fix it, it was also hard to find how to fix it because the things were so old. It was over 10 years. So now we're having more success along the way because those things are happening less often.
Yeah.
George has a explanation for why Bootsnap depends on message pack.
Aha. Okay. Okay. Thanks for this.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't have guessed that, but it makes sense. Cool. Thank you.
This is pretty awesome. I guess going through the different Rails versions, and in my mind, as we're bumping up, it's like triggering different points in my life.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
almost like a trip through history.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's like, oh, I remember that.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. I remember at the beginning I mentioned that we were doing this template rendering in the model. And we really struggled to find the way to do that in Rails 4.2, and I expected it to change and break again. But it hasn't broken yet. So that's good. So email spec stayed the same. Should we try to update the mail gem?
I think so. I guess the next best choice, so to say.
If this doesn't work, we could also try upgrading just net protocol directly instead of trying to upgrade the things that depend on it.
Right. Very cool. Yeah.
I would normally try to do what we're doing though, which is instead of because we're with net protocol, we're 2 or 3 levels down.
Yeah.
We're not already requiring it, and so I would prefer to update the dependency that uses that with the hopes that it would update rather than targeting net protocol specifically. It occurs to me that I'm not sure off the top of my head. So our gem file does not have the mail gem in it. So by saying bundle update mail, is that going to have the, it should.
The desired effect. I'm hoping it would, because I'm hoping it would bump up just the lock.
Yeah.
But you're right. It might not have the intended effect.
Well, while that runs, let's go over and just look at the versions of mail relative to the versions of Rails. So we went to 5.2.8, which was, oh no, wait, we need to look back at the beginning of 5.2. So 5.2 came out in April 9th, 2018. So that's 2. Oh, there's a big gap here. But so 2.7.1 would have been the current version. So mail update didn't change. So, and we're on 2.8.1, which is the latest version. So let's check the net protocol, I guess, versions and see. Actually, what does the mail? Oh, any version of net IMAP, net POP, and net SMTP. Okay. So 0.1.2, and I got confused because I saw the same numbers, but they're reversed. So the current version is 0.2.1.
One. Okay.
The version we're using is 0.1.2.
2021.
Okay, we have a couple options. We could leave it, ignore this, and hope that it goes away. Or we could be like, no, we need to fix it now because it could come back and bite us later. What do you think?
I'm thinking if we can sort it out now, I think it will save us in the future. Okay. What do we have already initialized?
So then I think we might be able to bundle update net IMAP and net POP.
Okay.
And net protocol and net SMTP. Net IMAP, net SMTP, net POP, and net protocol. I'll hope for the best here. We've tried to bundle update 2 things so far, and it just stayed at the current version. So there's no telling what will happen now.
In terms of the book itself, how did the book come into being? Was the idea to have it as a guide?
Yeah, I think the idea was, I think Joe was probably the one who had the idea, but the base idea behind Ruby Science is that we have these problems that emerge in Rails applications over time because they get messy, they get burdensome. And the premise of Ruby Science is that there are object-oriented principles that already exist that can help that not happen, and to provide a guide for how to do that. So, and they range everything from, simple things like extracting a method to single responsibility principle and how to apply that in Rails applications. And so one of the things with this example app is that, and the book is that, like, the Git history for the example app includes the refactorings. So we can go back in the Git history, and this is how we show changes in the book too. The book doesn't include, the source code for the book doesn't include directly the source for the application. We have a little macro that says, like, show these lines of this file at this Git revision and embed that in the book. And then it'll say, like, then we extract this method, or then we apply this class, we extract this class, and then we can reach back in the Git history and pull out what the was. So the book doesn't include the code. So we can actually go back and change it if we need to, or update it, or point to a different place. Okay. So we tried to update those gems and they all stayed the same. What are we doing wrong? Do we need to put the version in the gem file?
Or do we have something, what are we trying to do? We're trying to...
Or we could just ignore it.
Yeah, I think this is the only option we have left. My mind was going towards so the gem file versions that the version that we have in the gem file. If there's one that we could have removed to see if that would help, but I don't think that's the case for the ones that we've versioned.
Yeah, that's a good thought, but none of these gems are the ones that are depending on that. let's just ignore it.
Let's go.
Okay. I think the reason why I think that will probably be okay is because we'll probably get to a point where one of these gems gets updated when we update Rails. And,
yes. Yeah.
Which we're about to do right now, live. Okay, git branch Rails. Well, there's no Rails 5.3, so we're going to 6.
There we go.
So we're going to go over, look at what the last point release of Rails 6 was. Oh, and look at this. We are on the first page of versions.
Nice. Nice.
I never thought I'd see the day. 6.0.6.1. Okay. I really have a feeling like some of these versions that are locked down now is going to give us a problem. When we started, we were on 3.2.8. So we were on the 4th page back of Rails versions.
Wow. Yeah.
From August 9th, 2012. So more than 10 years ago.
More than 10 years ago.
And the other thing now is we're almost to, so Rails 6 was just end of life in June. So
in June, yes.
We're still on an unsupported version of Rails, but we're on the cusp
of
being on one that's maintained for security issues.
And the like with all the passage of time, the principles in the book, have they mostly stayed the same?
Yeah.
They've carried over? That's impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I've done a light audit so far in the process of updating. There are a couple things like, keyword arguments were introduced and that kind of thing. We need to apply those. And then there was one other thing. I forget what it was. There's one other thing which in the process of upgrading, we came across it, and the way that it's being done is like, would we do that today? I'm not sure that we would do that today.
Right.
I have notes somewhere. I have it in a note somewhere, but yeah. My note is, why is foreign question an option for submittable? And that is the note. I don't remember what it means anymore.
Foreign question?
That's what my note says. I remember it now.
Was it in one of the exercises?
Why is the foreign key question? Using the key word there. Okay. So this has one is called question. But there and it's called question and the key is question and that kind of thing. But there's another place where a refactoring has happened that it used to be a question association and it no longer is. It's an association to a submission or submittable, and the foreign key is still question _ID. And it looked to us like it should have been renamed.
We've got an observation from Myra who says, we might need to update the part that says Ruby on Rails is more than 15 years old, because it's more than 20 years old now.
Well, it technically is still
Technically
more
it
than,
is.
yeah, it technically is still more than 15 years old. We did, before that revision, it said nearly a decade old is what the text said. So we definitely needed to change that.
Thanks for that, Myra.
The funny thing is to me is that, Rails 3 was a big deal when it came out. It was the combination of MERB and Rails joining. So it was a big difference, but it doesn't seem that long ago to me. Like,
same here.
It doesn't seem like it was more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's because time flies when you're having fun. And if you like what you're doing, then
I have to agree. I remember being there was a lot of momentum around the Rails 3, and so I had been on the Rails bandwagon, if you will. And I think around the Rails 3 change update, there was just so much conversation and goodwill and blog posts and things like this that I think that solidified, in a sense, like the let me call it the attitude towards open source and software development and things like that. Like we could all come together and get along. It was really it was more than just an update for me. It was like a stake in the sand in terms of community. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, we were in the middle of writing Rails anti-patterns, and then the combination of MERB and Rails joining together and rewriting, we had to put the whole book on hold.
Yeah.
And so we had expected to be done, like we had like 8 months to write it or something like that. We were in like month 6 or something like that, and then it was announced. So we ended up putting it on hold, and it took about 2 years before it came out.
Oh wow!
Because then Rails 3 took a long time to actually come out. The concept of Rails 3 was introduced well before it actually came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so our specs attempted to run, couldn't run at all. An error occurred while loading. User adds multiple choice question to survey spec. Did you mean spec features user answers? That's an interesting failure. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, maybe that's not the fair. So error loading the SQLite active record adapter. Missing a gem it depends on. Can't activate SQLite 3. Already activated SQLite 3 1.3.13. Okay, so it's trying to activate 1.4. I'm guessing that this is like, it was trying to load that file when it ran into the problem, and that is a bogus error message, and the one that matters is this one.
Got it.
Does our gem file have SQLite 3 in it? It does.
1.3.6.
Okay. So we should be able to safely do this. We had put that version there for some reason. I don't know. A while ago.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't run into Ruby version problems, though. That would be the one thing that would really throw a wrench in the works. So we are about 10 minutes away from the top of the hour. We are going to be signing off then. I really, really, really want to try to get to Rails 7 today. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to take a break for lunch. I'm going to take a break for another meeting that I have. And then I'm going to be back on after that for the rest of the day.
Got it.
So it's late in the day for you. I'm not expecting you to join me. I'm talking to the people watching the stream and watching the recording. I feel like we said, I guess I'm an optimistic developer as opposed to a pessimistic one. But the pace has gone pretty well. We're already at Rails 6. We're only one major version away from Rails 7 now. We just need to go 6.1, 6.2, and then get to 7. So, well, I guess that's 3. So we're 3 versions away. So I'll be back in a few hours after the top of the hour, and we can hopefully hit that milestone.
Yeah.
Hey, and who knows? Maybe I'll actually go to 7.1.
That would be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Oh, good. We're okay. So we've successfully. Well, it's compiling.
And it didn't complain about Ruby.
Yes, nice. It didn't complain. It didn't complain about Ruby. It's still compiling though, so it could have a compilation error. But
got it.
Let's see. So yeah, as we sort of get to the end of this session, I just want to remind people again, we're available. We're available to if you have an out-of-date Rails application, we're available to help you upgrade it. If your application last test is having performance problems, you're having a lot of success and it needs to be scaled, we can also help with all that. If you need a new application created, a web or mobile application created, product idea validated, that's the kind of stuff that Thoughtbot does. So if you want to work with us, you can go to thoughtbot.com, check out everything there, get a sense of our work, and get in touch with us. And if you're a developer and you're probably familiar with our blog, Giant Robots Smashing Into Other Giant Robots, and our podcast, Bike Shed. Awesome. So check those out if you're not. You can go to bikeshed.fm for the Bike Shed podcast. If you like this kind of thing, that's a really good fit. And thoughtbot.com/blog. So we have incremented our Rails version to Rails 6. We got an SQLite error. We've upgraded SQLite to the version that it said. It compiled right, so we're probably not going to run into Ruby issues.
Yeah.
Our net protocol thing is still happening. That's a little disappointing. Okay, so that setting that we had set to true before is now always true.
Always true. Okay. Will be removed in 6.1.
Oh yeah, change from update attributes to just update. Well, that's looking pretty good. That's
yes.
Great. I to be honest, I was expecting. I've been talking the whole stream about how I was worried about going from 5 to 6.
That's right. Yeah.
And because config files, I thought were going to change. We haven't even updated the config files. We didn't run Rails app update. So that's interesting.
Yeah. The 5 to 6 and then 6 to 6.1 are the two are the two that I'm particularly interested to work through, to watch through.
Well, those are. So should we run Rails app update? I think we should, because
I think we should.
Okay, let me just commit this. And I'm realizing as I made that commit that I did change. I removed those things. So before we run the app update task, I want to make sure that I actually fix those deprecation warnings and didn't introduce a failure, because that's how you get in a wild goose chase, because
That's right.
You've made a change that actually broke something, but then you do something else and you think that
Yes.
that thing broke it.
Yes.
I'm just peeking at the version numbers because we're also really close to when. So 6.1 says that any version above 2.5 is supported. Which
Do you think you would decide?
doesn't ring true to me, because then 7 says less than 3.1. But there must be a bug that says this goes to a clarifying issue. But the potential exists that we could switch to my ARM Mac at that point.
Nice.
Okay, good. We ran the specs. We're still getting the net protocol thing, but our deprecation warnings are gone. And so now we can run.
What's your preference for Ruby version management?
ASDF.
ASDF, nice.
Yeah, that's what's in the laptop script and what we standardized on, and so I use that. And nice. I like it because it's not just for Ruby, so you can use it to manage Node, Ruby, and lots of other things too. And so having one consistent tool that does all those things in the same way. And ASDF just uses Ruby build under the hood, which is the same thing that the other solutions use.
Nice.
What about you?
ASDF, I'm finding that it's making for a very consistent onboarding experience. And as you're saying, also that it's not just for Ruby. Like you can add in all your tools under one configuration, and the configuration is quite elegant as well. So the Thoughtbot laptop script has served me well.
Eventually, we'll get tired of having to do this every time. Oh, wow. It's a big comment block.
Yeah. Okay.
Automatic connection switching. It's optional. We're not using it. Okay, that's all fine. We can take all those changes.
I'm going to try and turn on a light. One moment.
Yeah, no problem. Content security policy. That's just comments that are changing. So that's fine. I don't even know what. Oh, I see. All the nonce stuff and that kind of stuff moved into an initializer, or it was introduced into an initializer. Okay. We got to be careful not to overwrite this like I did last time.
Yes, like last time.
Okay, that's all fine. Something must have changed with active storage, probably some additional attributes being added or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it has its own separate update for this version of Rails.
Yeah. Was it, I think it introduced some tables and a migration at some point, but it might not be this one.
So this says we're missing a gem listen, and to add it to our gem file in the development group.
Okay.
That's interesting. I think the listen gem listens for file changes.
Mm-hmm.
So so I guess we need to manually run this now, because it didn't work. And it crashed. So I think we've got to, we need a bundle. So I guess we need to pick up where that update script crashed. But I don't know whether anything was going to happen after it.
Mm-hmm.
That's too bad. That's disappointing. I would be more worried about it if our specs weren't passing.
Agreed.
But,
yeah.
But the fact that our specs are passing makes me less worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we'll sign off in just a minute, but let's see whether this completes and works, and then we'll call it a day. Does that work for you, Silu?
That works for me. Thank you.
Hopefully we can end
on a high
note.
But this has been a lot of progress over the stream. This has been awesome.
Yeah, we started the day having just upgraded to 5.0 and not having resolved any issues on it. And we went through 5.0, 5.1, 5.2, 6. So RB node FS. Oh, that's coming from the listen gem.
Yes, right.
Those dependencies.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put on. Moment of truth here.
Yeah. Oh, nice. There we go. Oh,
Talk
nice.
about ending on a high note. Thanks, Sila. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Chad.
And thanks everybody for watching. Oh, I didn't catch it. Thanks everybody for watching. See ya. If you tune back in, see ya in a few hours. It'll be 2 p.m. Eastern time. And hopefully we can end our Friday having hit Rails 7. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you.